नमस्कार।
नमस्कार
जी। इंडियन म्यूजिक थ्रू द एजेस के इस तीसरे सेशन में आप सभी का स्वागत है और हमारे सभी यहाँ पर जितने भी सहभागी सभी पार्टिसिपेंट्स हैं, मैं रिक्वेस्ट करता हूं आप हर रोज सर जो पढ़ा रहे हैं, जो सिखा रहे हैं, कृपया उसके जो भी नोट्स आप लिख रहे हैं उसे व्हाट्सएप पे शेयर करना मत भूलिए, क्योंकि ये कोर्स है, इसे याद रखिए। सिर्फ स्पीच या कोई लेक्चर का ये नहीं है, इट्स अ कोर्स। सो आई हम्बल रिक्वेस्ट टू ऑल ऑफ यू, प्लीज शेयर योर नोट्स। और मैं सर से विनती करता हूं कि कृपया आज के अपने सत्र की शुरुआत करें।
So, in the third session of this coursework on history of Indian music, we are going to discuss about the musicological tradition in India and in a way the history of musicological texts or treatises in India. I have mentioned like the journey from Bharat to Bhatkhande. But of course, I'm not just going to talk till Bhatkhande. I will also discuss few musicologists if time permits. And in this 1 hour session, actually, I cannot go very much deep into the details of each Shastra Grantha or the treatise, but we will have just a quick glance on each work, or how was the journey of these musicological treatises. That's our point. Usually we take a full semester course on this particular subject in university department, so that's that huge subject. But still, we are going to have a quick view. To begin with, I want to give you some inputs about the musicological texts. So there are traditionally, or in Indian tradition, there are some types of texts. So there are basic two types, Lakshana Grantha and Lakshya Grantha. Lakshana Grantha are grammatical works. They give us critical description, rules and regulation, and in a way unbiased or impersonal facts about the musicology. And naturally, in Lakshana Granthas, there is no description of actual music making or the song forms. Means there are no examples of the song form. They will describe the song form, but they will not give the actual description of the songs. So these are Lakshana Granthas. Then Lakshya Granthas are in a way performing texts. So let me give you a clear idea with an example. You all must be knowing about Pandit Vishnu Narayan Bhatkhande's two major works or series of works. The first, as we know, Hindustani Sangeeta Paddhati or Shrimal Lakshya Sangeetam. Both these treatises by Bhatkhande are Lakshana Granthas. They discuss about the theory of ragas or theory of Hindustani art music. Okay. But on the other hand, is another series which is called as Kramik Pustaka Malika, which contains notations of literally thousands of the traditional and contemporary bandishes of his times. So this Kramik Pustaka Malika is Lakshya Grantha, from which you can actually trace the performing aspect of the music. Okay, so I think this point of Lakshya Grantha and Lakshana Granthas is clear to you. Of course, Lakshana Granthas are also in various types, such as there are Akara Granthas or Sangraha Granthas, there are Vyakarana Granthas, there are Shiksha Granthas. So basically Vyakarana Grantha or Darshana Grantha are Lakshana Granthas basically, but they discuss about the topic in greater details in regard of the grammar or the fundamental concepts. Okay. Then Shiksha Granthas are basically teaching manuals, or we can say Shiksha means teaching. So Shiksha Granthas are pedagogical texts. So when we talk about Naradiya Shiksha, it is a teaching manual written by a teacher or instructor called Narada. And naturally, Shiksha Granthas are short in length. They are in sutra form. They are not very descriptive. They don't give explanations. Because, as you know, when teacher takes some notes for his own work of teaching, he is going to talk in details. But the notes are not in detail. So Shiksha Granthas are like that. They are sutrabadha, but without much explanation. They are pedagogical texts, we can say. Then Sangraha Grantha or Akara Grantha are in a way collection of thoughts, theories, grammatical models, and of course, along with this, they also have some kind of information about the laksha, that is the actual performance or the actual act. Sangeet Ratnakara is one of such grantha. Akara grantha, Akara means a collection. So Sangeeta Ratnakar is basically that kind of text. Akara grantha. Akara means a collection or repository. So Sangeeta Ratna Akara is Akara grantha. So Sangeeta Ratnakar has both the elements. It also gives the description of ragas, and there are some elaborations. He also gives some explanation of the terms or vyutpatti, etymologies. Then it also gives the karanas or dhatus or vyanjanas of the instruments. So that is a performing aspect. And in this sense, it is a Akara Grantha or Sangraha Grantha. And Natya Shastra is in a way unique Grantha or text because it is called as Samyaka Grantha because it has everything in it. Samyaka means in totality. I will explain about Natya Shastra later. There is another type of text which is called as Tika and Bhashya. Actually, there is a slight difference in Tika and Bhashya. Bhashya is commentary, but Tika loosely translated as commentary, but Tika is basically, okay, I will talk about Bhashya Grantha first. Bhashya Granthas are commentaries. That means they explain the meaning and the concepts or the terms with examples and elaboration. So that is Bhashya Grantha. When Abhinavgupta writes a Bhashya Grantha on Natya Shastra, that means he explains the content of Natya Shastra in greater detail. Or many times when the Grantha is older and in the due course of time, many terms or many concepts get blurred because there is change in performing tradition. And then one need to address to the changed meaning or changed terms. So Bhashyakar make that clear. So Abhinavgupta comments on Bharata Natya Shastra. That means he explains all the terms, concepts in greater deal in his work Abhinav Bharati. So such Bhashya Granthas are equally important as the text, original text. So when we say about Sangeeta Ratnakar, To understand Sangeet Ratnakar in a better way, we need to read Sangeet Ratnakar along with the Bhashya Granthas like Kallinatha's Bhashya or Simha Bhupala's Bhashya. Otherwise, we will not have a clear idea of what exactly the author of Ratnakar, that is Nishyanka Sharangadeva, is talking about. Okay. But Tika Grantha is a little bit different in its structure. Tika Grantha is, in a way, it comments on the relevance of the text or the concepts and terms in the text. And in a way, there is a sort of negative shade to Tika. And that's why in Marathi language, we use word Tika for criticism or bad criticism. It has a negative sense. But originally Tika, the word Tika in Sanskrit doesn't have that kind of negative shade. But because it talks about the contemporary relevance of the text, it is sometimes in negation. And that's why it is called as Tika Grantha, a sort of criticism. Okay, so this is about the types of texts, and if you go into the details of each text, you will find that what kind of text that is actually. And according to the type of text, you will find that the author is explaining his subject matter accordingly. Even the chapterization depends on the type of Second thing I want to mention about the nature of musicology in India is it is always has been the process like there is performance first. After observing the performance and in a way codifying it, theorizing it, a grammarian writes a text. And naturally there is a lag in performance and a text, always. Even today, there is a lag. Like we perform something different happening or cooking in the performance, and the theoreticians follow that, say, after a few years. And they, because see, performance is a ever evolving thing. Like every time we sing the khayal, we sing in a different manner. We don't sing it in a pre-composed way. It is not a scored music kind of thing as in Western music or even in Carnatic music. Most part is in a way pre-composed. So it is not so in neither in Hindustani music or nor in the other types of music like say folk music or even Dharma Geet also or confluence music. There are experimentations going on each time. And naturally, the theoreticians don't consider sort of experimentations until they get, in a way, crystallized. Because for writing a grammatical text, you need to get a confirmation from the performing tradition. So, if some raga is evolved, I create some rag, and if that clicks and it vanishes, then there is no use of writing the grammar of that raga in the text. And naturally, we find that in the last century there are many new ragas, newly composed ragas. Even there are Adhuna Prasiddha ragas. Many ragas has came into circulation. And you'll find that in the last century, periodically there is upgradation of the text about the explanation of the ragas. So the point is, there is always a gap between performance and the grammatical text or the scholastic tradition. We have two basically traditions. First is performing tradition, which is a prime tradition, and second is scholastic tradition, or we can say Granthik Parampara. So the Granthik always follows this performing tradition, Prayoga Parampara. And there is a very interesting feature about the Indian, especially Indian parampara, that our Indian theoreticians, primarily from the ancient and medieval time, they have never talked about the musicians, their experiments or their performances, their creations, because they think, as I explained in the first session, we believe in uh, Advaita philosophy and Karma Siddhanta. So, for a performer's lifetime, his performance is of prime importance. But if you scale it on a larger time cycle or a chronology, it's just part of few years. And naturally, grammarians think that it is just passing reference. And so there is no need of actually describing a person or his creation. Rather, they describe the tattva or the philosophy or the thought behind that creation. And so most of the musicological texts have the principles or the fundamentals, the concepts, and not the description of the actual performance as such. So with this introductory part, now we will go into the details of the musicological texts in India. As it is always told that the first ever text in India about the performing arts is Bharata's Natya Shastra. Were there any text before Bharata's Natya Shastra? Yes, of course, there were a lot of texts, but unfortunately we don't have them right now. Primarily, until the advent of British in India, and we can also say that before, say, these Muslim rulers in India, primarily in ancient times and early phase of medieval times, this musicological tradition was oral in its form. मौखिक परंपरा रही है. तो ग्रंथ भी ग्रथित नहीं होते थे पहले, वो मुखोद्गत होते थे. Naturally, many texts or many, we can say, thought were not actually written down. They were orally transmitted, and in this process, many texts we have missing. And of course, many texts were written, but in due course of time, they have vanished. As we know, there were many ups and downs in Indian history, like upheavals were there. As we know, Muslim invaders burnt the universities in ancient India. They burned down the temples, and mostly the temples and courts, royal courts, were the treasure houses of such kind of knowledge. Naturally, that was destroyed. So unfortunately, I can say that if there was 100% of musicology, we only have the 20% part of that musicology left today. As there is a tradition of giving the names and invoke the Purvasuris, that is the earlier grammarians in India. Every text gives the names of the prior grammarians, Purvasuri. So even in Natya Shastra, there is a reference to a lot of earlier grammarians, but we don't have their texts. Yes, of course, Samaveda. Usually we start from Samaveda. Everything starts from Samaveda in Indian music. But Samaveda is not a musicological text. I would say it is a Lakshya Grantha, the Lakshana Grantha. Because Samaveda, the riches from Samaveda, were actual songs which were recited. So Samaveda doesn't explain about the music. It is music. So Samaveda and the other texts like Sutra Granthas and Shiksha Pratishakyas. So there are several texts in the Vedic pantheon of literature. Brahmana, Aranyakas, and Shiksha Grantha, Sutra Grantha. So each Veda has all this stuff. So Samaveda also has several subtexts. But unfortunately, most of these texts don't explain about the theory of the music. Yeah, some texts like Pushpa Sutra Pratishakya gives some kind of explanation about the actual performance, but we cannot say that they are purely musicological texts. So the first text that we have is Bharata's Natya Shastra. And last day, I think Sai asked me about Natya Shastra and Naradiya Shiksha status as who wrote or where the community of writers or was it written by a particular person. So it is believed that Bharata, yes, there was a Muni called Bharata, of course, but the text is not written by just one Bharata Muni, and many times it is addressed as in plural. So Bharataha means अनेक भरत हुए हैं. So that means there was a committee of scholars and who in a way made the text or compiled the text in its form for several centuries, and that's why there is no fixed date for Bharatanatyam Shastra. We said that from around BC 5th century to 2nd century AD, that is the time of formation of Bharata's Natya Shastra. And of course, Bharata's Natya Shastra is again not monolithic text. There are a lot of interpolations, so even the language has changed. Some shlokas or the verses are in a sort of Vedic Sanskrit, some are in the later type of Sanskrit. So it is a mix or hybrid kind of text. And again, Natya Shastra is not just about music. It's primarily text of theater performance. And so the thought on music or a grammar of music is in a way grammar of applied music for the theater. So many concepts which Bharata explains or many rules he explains are about their theatrical music, Ranga Sangeet. They are not about pure music. Though he in some concepts and some terms in original form, like he explains the Swara Shruti, Murchana, Grama, Sarana, all that part is that has not connection with the theater as such. But when he talks about the Dhruva or Gitis or the Purvaranga Vidhi, all that is about the performance. Even the Rasa Siddhanta that we talk always about music, Bharata doesn't state that the Swaras or the Jatis have a pure connection with the Rasa. He says you can apply these Swaras or these Jatis in the dramatical performance for such and such mood. So he clearly mentions it. So it is a applied notion. It is not a pure notion. Unfortunately, later grammarians or even today, we have mistaken that notion in a way. Okay, so after Natya Shastra covers in a way a wider perspective with clubbing, theater, dance, music, literature, and even some other aesthetic concepts also about the performing tradition. And Bharata's Natya Shastra is a pan-Indian text. So we get the reflections of Bharata's Natya Shastra in almost every performing tradition in India. It may be folk theater, folk music, or even the music and dance in the Far East, the Southeast countries like Java, Sumatra, and all the such countries. The theater, dance, and music in that countries also have some kind of influence of Natya Shastra, and that's why Natya Shastra is a great text. Abhinav Gupta 11th century wrote a commentary on Natya Shastra, which is called as Abhinav Bharati. And so, understanding Natya Shastra, one needs to also read Abhinav Bharati. The next text we have is Dattilam. It is said that Dattila was from the same lineage of Bharata, but Dattilam is in a way first text which talks purely about music. Dattila doesn't describe anything about dance or theater. He just talks about music. So it is a purely musicological text. And it is dated around 3rd century. Around that same time, there is text called Naradiya Shiksha. And there is a funny thing. There are 3 or 4 texts in the name of Narada. And all these 4 Naradas are different. They are from different times, time and different even spaces or regions. So we can say this was Narada 1. And this Narada doesn't have any connection with the mythological Narada. This was a Vedic scholar in a way. And this is a Shiksha Grantha. So it is a Sutra Baddha Grantha. It is a pedagogical text, very small text. And primarily Naradiya Shiksha talks about the Vedic Sangeet, Samaga. It is about Margi Sangeet. It's not about Deshi Sangeet. So the next available treatise is Brihad Deshi by Matanga. It is written about century AD to 8th century AD. And between Natya Shastra and Brihad Deshi, there are a lot of texts, but we don't have them now. We have lost them in the report. As I said in the last lecture, that Matanga mentions some grammarians before him, but we don't have the text of these grammarians. And interestingly, Matanga also quotes their verses, but we don't have the text. Brihad is a text because it is the first text that handles music in a wider perspective of Deshi Sangeet, that is music of people. Because Natya Shastra, even Naradiya Shiksha and Dattilam, they talk about Margi Sangeet. So it was a music either firstly for rituals or Dharma Sangeet. Secondly, it was a sort of Puritan music or purist music. And thirdly, Natya Shastra, as we are talking, it is theatrical music. But Brihad Deshi talks about the music of people, music of masses. So it is a text on folk music as well as the music that of today. And this text is also very important because it gives the famous Vyakhya or definition of Raga. This text gives, as we know that Natya Shastra or Dattilam don't explain about Rag as such. They talk about Jatis. Though there are reference to Grama Rag in Dattilam or some other text, but even Naradiya Shiksha talks about Grama Ragas, but there is no Rag as such. The concept of Raga is clearly developed in the time of Matanga. And of course, the grammar of Raga in such a great detail, that means this concept was consolidated before Matanga, and that's why he's writing now. And he also talks about Vadyas, Prabandhas, that is instruments, and the song forms in greater depth. Unfortunately, this text is Trutrita, that is, it's not available in full form. Few chapters are missing. But whatever we have with Brihad Deshi, it's fantastic work. Then a very important text is Bharata Bhashya, written by the king of Mithila, called Nanya. It was written around 1100. Bharatavasha is a very important text because it talks about many things like ragas, grammar raga, bhasha, vibhasha, antarbhasha, kriyanga, upanga, all such kind of ragas with the details. Like he gives the prastara, raga prastara, upo, that is the, we can say, have you read Vinayak Bhopatardhan's book, Rag Vijnan? In every raga, he gives the alap and tan. That kind of description is written in Bharata Bhashya. Also, he gives in while talking about the prabandhas, he explains the prabandha with an example. And there are many prabandhas with notation. Unfortunately, the notation system is very crude. We don't get the mandram chinnas or vikrita swara chinnas, or even the bars, etc., or samakal matra chinnas. But still, there are a lot of examples, and surprisingly, they are in Sanskrit, Prakrit, Maharashtra Prakrit is there, also Lati, and Kannada also. So it's a great text in a way, which we can actually reconstruct the compositions from Bharata Bhasha, and that kind of effort is already done musicians. I remember that Pandit Jitendra Abhisheki used to sing a prabandha, Sambhava Lalata Nayana Bhujadikam. The text is from Bharata Bhashya, though the tune is by Pandit Abhisheki ji himself. It is not the tune as written in Bharata Bhashya. He has composed it, but the text belongs to Bharata Bhashya. Then next text, very important text is Manas Ullas or Abhilashtartha Chintamani, which is written by Someshwar Chalukya, King Someshwar Chalukya. Now you will see there are many kings who were writing text. I will talk about how the kings were the grammarians. I will discuss it later. Since Someshwar Chalukya was a king of the western Maharashtra region, this text is written about 1125. And it's written in Maharashtra. And this text gives a lot of references to the music and song forms in Maharashtra. As I mentioned last day, he refers to Ovi, Dhavala Prabandha, Chari, Charya, Giti, a lot of such things, in which song forms are still in practice in Maharashtra. Then very important text is Sangeeta Chudamani by Jagadeka Malla, written in 1150. He was again the king of Kalyani. Kalyani means the dynasty which was in Andhra Pradesh, around today's Hyderabad. After this, the most important text in, I would say, ancient times, which talks about music in greater deal, is Sangeeta Ratnakara. It is also called as Saptadhyayi. As we know that there is a Vyakarana Grantha about language called Ashtadhyayi. Similarly, this Sangeeta Ratnakara is Saptadhyayi of music because it has 7 chapters. The author is Nishanka Sharangadeva, and this treatise was written about 1210 to 1240. This was the time of the king Raja Ramchandra Yadav, in which court Sharangadeva was there. And this is a very elaborate text. It explains the raga, tala, prabandha, many aesthetic concepts in Prakirana Adhyaya, like Gayaka Gunadosh. He was Ayurvedacharya, so he also explains the merits and demerits of voice, classified the human voice in the reference to the Ayurvedic norms like Kapha, Vata, Pitta. And he also given some classification on the basis of performance. The Prabandha Adhyaya is huge, it's elaborate. He almost gives a description of more than 200 song forms. The Vadhyadhyaya in number of verses, great details. So actually one cannot go or one cannot leave Sangeet Ratnakar and study musicology of India. It's that important text. And Sangeet Ratnakar falls in a period when we can say that the ancient system of music was on the verge of extinction or change, and a new system was evolving. So we can say Sangeet Ratnakar is the last treatise of the ancient music, and it is the first treatise of the medieval music. And that's why it's important. It's a bridge between ancient and medieval music. And Sharangdeva also mentions a lot of concepts in a changing or transition. Then there is a very important text called Sangeeta Samay Sar, written in between 1200 to 1300, written by Parshwadeva in the reign of Chandela king Paramardi. And this is also written in a great detail. He explains 102 ragas with prastaras, that is notations. And this text is in a way important because it has a first reference of Bhairavi Rag. Then around 1320 to 1380, there is a important text called Sangeeta Sar, written by Swami Vidyaranya or Madhava Vidyaranya. Unfortunately, we don't have this text right now. But there are a lot of references and quotations from this text in the later grantha called Sangeeta Sudha. This Swami Vidyaranya is well known because of, as like he's called as medieval Chanakya, because he was behind the formation or foundation of Vijayanagar Empire, the Hindu empire in the Islamic era. And this grantha, Sangeeta Sar, is very important because it has the first mention of Mela Paddhati. As we know that earlier ragas were classified in the system of Grama Raga, Raga, Bhasha, Vibhasha, Antarbhasha, etc. Then Sangeeta Ratnakar has another system also. And then after this, in the medieval period, we have another system of Purusha Raga, Stri Raga, Napunsaka Raga. Then there is a system of like 6 ragas, Raginis, Raga Ragini Paddhati. But Vidyaranya gives another kind of method of classifying the ragas on the basis of Mela. And he explains 15 Mela and 15 Janaka ragas, and explains total 50 ragas according to this system. Then there are many texts after 1350 to 1400 or 1450. I'm not going into the details or the names of all this, but like Sangeeta Upanishad Sarodhar, Sharangadeva Paddhati, Sangeeta Sudhakar, Bhava Prakashan, Sangeeta Shringarahar, Sharangdhara Paddhati, a lot of texts are. Even there are like Sangeeta Sarakalika. Then in the 15th century, there is a very important text called Sangeeta Raj. It was written by Rana Kumbha. And this text is very much important because Rana Kumbha clearly states that the concepts or the meaning of the terms as mentioned in Sharangdeva Sangeeta Ratnakar are no more in practice. They have changed and the music system has changed. And so he stated that I am now stating the different meaning which is relevant to today's time. And with such kind of references, we get to know there was a drastic change in music system. And of course, in around 14th century, there was bifurcation like Uttar Hindustani Sangeet and South Indian music, to which we call Karnataka today. But in that time, it was called a Dakshina Shala Sangeet or Dakshinatya Sangeet. So Rana Kumbha also mentions this. that there are two systems of music now in India. Then there is a very important text called Sangita Damodar by Shubhankara in the 15th century. He was from Bengal region. And this text has again Raga Ragini system, but he also mentions the Raga Dhyanas. So he clubs music with the painting. A very fascinating text is that. Around the same time, in the 15th century, that is around 1486 to 1525, that is a reign of Mansingh Tomar. As we know, Mansingh Tomar was a great patron of Drupad, and under his patronage, Drupad form flourished. It is said like that. Mansingh Tomar wrote a treatise called Man Kutuhal. Unfortunately, again, this treatise is not available to us in the original form. But later, during the reign of Aurangzeb, one of Aurangzeb's Sardar, who was appointed in Kashmir, called Fakirullah, he translated Manu Kutuhal into Farsi in the name Raga Darpan. So that Raga Darpan, the Farsi translation of Manu Kutuhal, is available today. Of course, it is not a translation of the full text, full original text, and it also has some interpolations or Fakirullah's own part or own interpretation. He also mentions a lot of artists like Drupad singers' names, even various instrumentalists of that time. So in a way, Fakirullah's Raga Darpan is very important because that is the first text which gives us information about the medieval musicians. Okay, but unfortunately, the original Man Kutuhal of Mansingh Tomar is vanished. Then there are other texts like Sangita Chintamani, Sangita Kalpataru, Tala Deepika, Lakshmi Ranga Lakshmi Vilas, etc. But the most important text in this 15th century is Swaramela Kalanidhi by Ramamatya. It was written in South India and it was written around 1546 to 1550. Now Ramamatya's work is that has a great importance because it explains a lot of concepts like, as many of you have studied in the syllabus of Sangeet Alankar or Sangeet Vishara, that Tar ki lambai and the measurement. Okay, do you remember that? That all stuff is in Swaramela Kalanidhi. There are 5 chapters which explain the Upodghata, Veena, Adhyay, Swaradhyay, Meladhyay, Ragadhyay, and Ramamatya explains 20 thatas or Mela, and he explains 63 Jadnya Ragas. So that is an elaborate description. In the same period, we have very interesting musicologist called Pundarika Vithala. He was from South India, from the Tamil Nadu region, and he wrote 4 major treatises on Indian performing art. And it's very interesting to know about him. He was basically from South India, then he migrated to Maharashtra. In that time, there was Farooqi dynasty, Muslim dynasty in Maharashtra. So he was there for 2 decades in Maharashtra, and where he wrote his first treatise called Sadraga Chandrodaya. So it is about the music system in South India and also which was prevalent in Maharashtra region. Then he migrated to Rajasthan and he took shelter in a court of Rajput king, where he wrote Raga Manjari. That is, again, he explained the system of ragas in a different way. So we find that, Sadraga Chandrodaya explains about a different kind of music system in South India. Raga Manjari is different, which is in the western zone, the music in western zone. Later he joined Akbar's court, Mughal Emperor Akbar's court, and where he wrote another text called Ragamala. And this text again explains a different kind of picture of the raga system, which was prevalent in northern part. So we have three pictures of contemporary raga systems in India at that time. So Pundarik Vittal's work is very much interesting. He also wrote a treatise on dance, Naratana Nirnay. To sum up, Pundarik Vittal gives two systems of raga classification. Like he explains Mela Paddhati and he explains 18 Melas. On the other hand, he explains Purusha Rag, Stri Rag, that kind of Rag Ragini system also, with 6 Purusha Ragas, 5 Bharyas, and 5 Putra Ragas. So it's very interesting to actually plot the differences from Pundarik Vittala's treatises. Am I going very fast, or is it okay for you? Actually, in a small period of just hour, I am attempting to cover all these things. So I'm going a little bit fast.
Some books
Okay,
names
so
are
I will move
missed
ahead.
by us. Now, Jagadeka Malla's book name we missed. Jagadeka Malla.
Yeah, Jagadeka Malla's book is Sangeeta Chudamani.
Okay, thank you.
After this 15th century and major two texts like Swaramela Kalanidhi and Pundarik Vittala's four texts, in 1610 there is work by Somanath called Raga Vibodh. Raga Vibodh is a very interesting text because it has a first reference of word That, though the Mela system was even earlier. But the word That is firstly used by Somanath, and he explains 23 Thatas. And this book, Raga Vibodh, also has the combination of music and painting. So he explains the Raga Dhyanas and Raga Malika Chitra. And he explains 15 types of gamakas also. So there is always an addition from, if we can say that from Brihadesh's time, we get to know that there is always addition in gamakas or Gayaka Gunadoshas, even in Alankaras, there is always addition. After Somanath's Raga Vibodh, there is an important text called Chaturthandi Prakashika. You must be knowing about Chaturthandi Prakashika of Venkatamaki because it is always told us that Bhatkhande borrowed the That system from Chaturthandi Prakashika. It's true that he did that, but Venkatamaki's work is important in other aspects also. Venkatamaki was, in a way, he was a South Indian person. He was son of Govinda Dikshitar, who was himself a great Veena player. And Govinda Dikshitar wrote Sangeeta Sudha, that I mentioned that though Vidyaranya's Grantha is not with us today, Sangeeta Sudha quotes or refers to a lot of verses from Vidyaranya's work. So Govinda Dikshit, the father of Venkatamaki, was an important grammarian. And he was in the court of Tanjar. So Venkatmaki got the training from his father, and he wrote. He was himself a Veena player. He actually created his own new sort of Veena, which is explained in his text. And this is a milestone work which elaborates 72 melas in Carnatic music. And we know this theory of 72 melas, how they were formed. And he also explains 52 ragas from 19 melas. He states that even though there are 72 melas, 19 melas are important or they are in circulation, and he states 55 ragas from that. Then around 1625, there is a very important text by Damodara called Sangeeta Darpan. Damodar was from Maharashtra again, and so he talks about the system in the middle part of India. So yes, I must mention that though there were two main streams like North Indian and South Indian music, from Maharashtra, Gujarat, Andhra, and northern part of Karnataka, this middle belt also had its own different music system in the medieval time. Unfortunately, that music system disappeared about, say, late 18th century or early 19th century. So there is always mention of Hanumat Mat in such text. And when there is mention of Hanumat Mat, that means that text belongs to this region, because that is a different kind of music system. Even our many Lavani composers has mentioned that they follow Hanumat Mat. Yeah? So that was a different kind of music system. Okay, so Sangeeta Darpan by Damodar, it was written during the reign of Jahangir, Mughal Emperor Jahangir. There are 6 chapters similar to Sangeet Ratnakar, but there is a first mention about Shadja Panchama as Achala Swaraj. As we know, earlier text Pancham was movable. There was Chuta Pancham. So it is important that Sangeeta Darpan explains Panchama, Shadja and Pancham both as Achala Swaraj. And he mentioned 2 states of all other notes like 2-re, 2-ga, 2-dha, that sort of system he mentions, which we follow today. So that is very interesting. This in a way gives us that idea that the basic concepts about Swara Saptaka were changing. So he explains the 12-note scale instead of Shrutis. He also mentions Ragadhanas with connecting them with the gods and goddesses. Some shlokas, Ragadhana shlokas, were even sung by musicians at that time, and even Paluskar also used to sing the shlokas, Ragadhana shlokas. Okay, so after this, there is an important text by Ahobala in 1665 called Sangeeta Parijata. This was again South Indian text. This text is a first text to establish the mathematical ratio of swaras on the string of veena, and also mentions some new ragas, like he mentions ragas like Bengali, Meghanad, Kuranga, Salanga, etc. So this text is also has a different kind of importance. Around 1675, there is a text called Raga Tarangini. It was again written from the region of Mithila, today's Muzaffarpur in Bihar, and the author is Lochana Kavi. Lochana Kavi also is important because he mentions ragas like Yaman, Fardost. And he also explains 12 thatas and giving description of 75 Janya ragas. He also explains Mishra raga, concept of Mishra raga. So in this way, it is very important. Okay, so after this, actually we are talking about the 17th century text. In the same time, in the North India, there was actually not North India, we can say it's in the Madhya Pradesh region. There was a musicologist called Hriday Narayan Dev. He was a king of Gadha state. He wrote 2 texts, Hriday Kautukam and Hriday Prakash. 2 years back, I actually translated both these texts from Sanskrit to English. Though the work is not published, but I have translated them. Then there is a very important text called Raga Tattva Bodh by Srinivasa. And then in the same time, there are a lot of texts. I'm not going to details of such, like, but around the end of 17th century, that is around 1680, there is a very important person called Bhava Bhatta, who wrote 3 texts called Anupa Sangita Vilas, Anupa Sangita Ratnakar, and Anupa Sangitankush. Bhava Bhatta was son of Janardana Bhatta, and he hailed in Dholpur, Rajasthan. And his father, Janardana Bhatta, was court musician in the court of Mughal king Shah Jahan. And he also he was titled as Sangeeta Raj. But Bhava Bhatta was a court musician in Bikaner state under King Anup Singh. And that's why he has mentioned the name of his patron king Anupa in every text. Anupa Sangita Vilas, Anupa Sangita Ratnakar, Anupa Sangitankush, that way. He authored total 7 treatises in Sanskrit and Hindi also, such as other texts called Drupada Tika, Sangita Vinod, Murali Prakasha, Nashtodishta Prabodhaka, etc. And he has given texts of a lot of Drupads prevalent at that time. So in a way, this also sheds a light on the Lakshya Parampara. I'll already have mentioned about the Farsi text by Fakirullah, Raga Darpan in Aurangzeb's time. Similarly, we now get a lot of Farsi texts also, like Tohfatul Hind by Mirza Khan in 1709, Risala Zikr Mughniyat-e Hindustan by Inayat Khan in 1735. Tulajirao Bhosle, the king of Tanjore, the Marathi king of Tanjore, he was a musicologist. He wrote Sangita Samay Saramrita. And this is also a very important text because he followed the 72 male system of Venkatmakhi, but he explains 110 ragas of Carnatic music in 21 melas, and he also has explained some North Indian ragas. So we can see that there was always give and take between North and South Indian music. Similarly, Sawai Pratap Singh, the king of Jaipur, was a musicologist. He wrote Shri Radha Govinda Sangita Sar around 1780. And this was in a way, translation. We cannot say translation. It was an adaptation of Sangita Ratnakar. So the format is the same. 7 adhyayas, like Ragadhyay, Taladhyay, Prakiranadhyay, Vadyadhyay, Prabandhadhyay, Nrityadhyay. But he explains all these topics with the contemporary relevance. And that is a fascinating treatise. Actually, it was published in the British era in the book form with several volumes. I think 14 volumes by a musicologist called Balwantrao Sastrabuddhe, who actually formed the Pune Gayan Samaj, which was later converted into Pune Bharat Gayan Samaj. Okay, Shah Alam II, who wrote Nadirat-e-Shahi, is again an important Farsi text. And in the same time, we find the first English treatise on Indian music called Musical Modes of Hindus. This was written by William Jones. William Jones is a very celebrated personality in the Oriental studies. As we know, he was a founder of Royal Asiatic Society of Bengal. And he's called as the father of Indology or Oriental studies. He translated some part of Vedas and also Kalidasa's some works. But this was the earliest book on Indian music by a Westerner. And this book, he has wrote about Shrutis in Indian music. He also talks about Raga Rangini system, Raga Mala paintings. And he has condemned the Persian translation of Sanskrit text. And he himself studied Sanskrit, Sangit Ratnakar, Sangit Narayan, Raga Darpan, Raga Vibodh in Sanskrit. So as he was a Sanskrit scholar, he read the treatises in original. That's a very fascinating thing. In the 1810 to 1899, we have a lot of text. I'm not going to details, but I will mention some important, like Nagmat-e Asafi by Ghulam Muhammad Raza, which was written in 1813. Ghulam Muhammad Raza was a Nawab or Rais from Patna. Then there is a very important, and I will say that controversial book called Music of Hindustan by Captain N. Augustus Willard. This was written in 1834. Now I must tell you about Captain Augustus Willard, because he is a father of confusion in Indian music history. Why I'm calling him as so, I will explain. Basically, Captain Willard was a British army officer at the state of Banda, a small princely state in Madhya Bharat, middle India. He was a master of Western music and band master, worked as an army band master. And as Nawab of Banda was a great patron of music, there were a lot of musicians, basically Muslim musicians, in the court. And Captain Willard took interest, and he gathered a lot of anecdotes about the music from these, in a way, traditional musicians, but they were not having any kind of knowledge of musicology. So this information was not, I will say, authentified. कही कही गई बातें, जो बनी बनाई बातें या बढ़ा चढ़ाकर जो कुछ बताते हैं, ऐसी बातें जो थी, वो कैप्टन विलर्ड ने इस किताब में लिखी. So it was a sort of compilation of the anecdotes and information given by these unpad Muslim musicians. And he published this book called Music of Hindustan in 1834 in Calcutta. And yeah, it is important because this was a sort of early attempt of historical documentation of Hindustani musicians, because he explains a lot of musicians, their anecdotes. Like ये जो सब कहानियां है ना, तानसेन के बारे में या गोपाल नायक और आमिर खुसरो के बारे में, lot this nonsense is mentioned firstly by Captain Willard. Some anecdotes were earlier told by Fakirullah, but Fakirullah was the first, and second was the Captain Willard, who have in a way done the sin of spreading wrong notions about such anecdotes. Why I'm calling them wrong notions? Because these are not historical facts. If we later will go into detail later, then I will explain why I'm calling them non-historical facts. But okay, later Captain Augustus Willard's work was reproduced in Saurendramohan Tagore's work Hindu Music by various authors in 1875, and also got translated into Marathi by Gahar Anade. And the content from Captain Willard's book was also taken in the account of Bhatkhande, and that's why all this stuff got authentified in a way as a history of Indian music. And that is the crux of many problems about history of Indian music. But yeah, still Captain Augustus Willard's work is very important. Then we have we find that from 1838 onwards, there are a lot of texts in the vernacular languages. Like in 1838, there is a book by Bairamji Chinoy called Ragasthan Pothi. It is in Gujarati. In 1842, there is a text called Sangeeta Kalpadrum in Bengali by Krishnananda Vyas. Then there is a first Marathi book called Gayana Prakash in Marathi by Bhau Shastri Ashtaputre in 1850. Then in Hindi, Nada Vinod by Pannal Gusai in 1852. Then Kanun-e Sitar in Urdu by Sadiq Ali. So there are a lot of such texts. A very prominent musicologist was Saurendra Mohan Tagore, who wrote extensively in Bangla and English also. His books like Mridanga Manjari, Harmonium Sutrasar. Yeah, now Harmonium Sutrasar is very interesting book because that is the first book on the Western instrument, which was quickly adapted. And interestingly, this book was written in 1874. So almost 150 years back, this man was writing about Harmonium Sutrasar. uh, then Wajid Ali Shah's book, as we know, Wajid Ali Shah was a great patron of music, dance, and he himself was a Thumri singer. He was a composer of Thumri. He wrote many books, but Bani and Nazo, these are very important books, which are in a way Lakshya Granthas, because it contains the actual songs without notation, of course. And of course, there are a lot of books. I will not go into every detail, but another important musicologist was Maula Baksh and his son Inayat Khan Pathan from Baroda. बड़ौदा में जो संगीत शाला बनेगी वहां से उन्होंने बहुत सारा काम किया about publishing the musicological works. And then there is an important musicologist called K.B. Deval, who published his work on Shrutis, Hindu musical scale and 22 Shrutis in 1910. Then there is Bhatkhande, who published Rimal Lakshya Sangeetam in 1910. And as we know, Hindustani Sangeet Paddhati, he published from 1913 to I think 1934 or 36. There was C. Clements, who wrote Introduction to Study of Indian Music in 1913. So these were the major grammarians from the ancient time to early modern time. And of course, there are a lot of musicologists after, say, Bhatkhande, Appa Tulsi, and Raja Nawab Ali, K.B. Deval, Clements, and some important names are like Acharya Brihaspati, Premlata Sharma, of course, Dr. Ashok Ranade, and many others. So this journey of musicological texts is going on. So I think this is all about today. I have already crossed the limit of 1 hour. Are there any questions? Yeah, Sai, you can ask.
Sir, is there any information, or if you could tell about the work of Jayadev in short? And it is also heard that Rana Kumbha had written a kind of critique or Bhashya Granth on Jayadev's this thing. Gita Govinda, they say that it's, I think, Rasika Priya or some name.
Yeah, there are a lot of tikas or commentaries in Hindi also, or other languages also. Actually, Gita Govinda is not a musicological text. It is a Lakshya Grantha.
Correct.
It is a collection of actual pieces of music and also for dance. And Gita Govindam is a very important text in the way that it was considered as a major work in the Vaishnavite text, Vaishnavite traditions all over the India. So we find Ashtapadis in the performing tradition from Manipur to Kerala and to the north. And of course, a lot of translations were done of Gita Govindam. Even in the medieval times, there are almost 18 to 20 translations and commentaries on Gita Govindam. Actually, there is a very important book on Gita Govindam with English translation, recent work around 1960s or 70s by an American scholar called Barbara Storr Miller. And she has taken a review of the major translation and tika granthas on Gita Govinda. You can get that book. I think that book is available on internet also. You can check it out. Yeah, Shivani, what is your question?
Sir, sorry, yesterday because of certain technical issue, I wasn't able to ask a question that was relevant to yesterday's subject. Is it okay to ask, sir?
Yeah, you can ask.
Sure. So I was going through this one book called Khayal Vocalism by Deepak Raja. And can I quote a sentence from his book? I had a question about this. If the Khayal and the Thumri are products of the same socio-cultural process, we cannot rule out the possibility that at some stage of socio-cultural evolution, the two genres interacting as contemporaries would create a blurring of the distinctions between them. So he says that Drupad was before Khayal and Thumri, and he says that Drupad was sort of it was like an end of feudalism when Khayal and Thumri came. So that's why at a later process, Khayal and Thumri, in between these two, there is a sort of blurring or a thin line between them. That's why we find कि वो थोड़ा मिलता जुलता है some sort of.
Actually, Shivani, your voice is breaking at my side maybe, so I'm not able to listen you properly. But can you send your question to me on WhatsApp? I will answer that question in say next to in the session on the medieval music.
Okay, okay, sir.
When I will discuss about the Drupad, the transition from Drupad, Khayal, etc. So I will explain that. But you send your question to me on WhatsApp.
Sure, sir. Sure, I will.
Okay. Anjana Wadikar. Yeah.
Sir, who's the writer of Aine Akbari? And what is it about?
Yeah, Aine Akbari is Abul Fazl, I think, and it's not related to music as such. It's a in the Mughal codes there were historians who used to write the about the reign of that specific king. So you will say that there is Aine Akbari. Aina means so mirror of the reign of Akbar. So
it's by Abul Fazl. Abul Fazl.
Abul Fazl. Yeah, Abul Fazl.
Okay, thank you.
Similarly, there like Jahangir Nama is there. So almost every Mughal emperor has such kind of text. It's about the overall political achievements of the king. But yes, Abul Fazl mentions about the royal court musicians, and that's why Aine Akbari is also important for music, because there are mentions of or description about the court musicians. He actually doesn't elaborate on that, but he gives a list, and there is a list of almost 30 or 40 musicians in the court of Akbar.
Okay. If anyone wants the manuscript of Aine Akbari or Akbarnama, I have one handwritten manuscript. And it is in digital format. If anyone wants for study, we can share it with them also.
Yeah. Sangeeta Rajpathak, what is your question?
सर मी फार वर्षांपूर्वी एकदा त्र्यंबकेश्वरला तुम्ही जे एक्सप्लेन केलं होतं आता की राग आणि त्यांच्या रागमाला किंवा पेंटिंग्स त्याच्यावरची, तर असे मी एकदा पाहिले होते. तर असे कुठे अवेलेबल आहेत का की जे बघता येतील? त्याचा रेफरन्स काही अवेलेबल आहे का?
कशाचा? म्हणजे रागमालिका चित्रांचा?
हा, रागमालिका आणि त्याचं चित्र. म्हणजे ऍक्च्युअली त्यांनी तो राग दिला होता आणि
याच्यावर बरीच पुस्तकं आहेत. ऍक्च्युली याच्यावर काम पुष्कळ झालंय. अनेक लोकांनी रागमालिका चित्र आणि वेगळ्या सोर्सेस मधनं त्यांचं चित्रण कसं केलं गेलंय याबद्दल बरंच काम केलंय. 3-4 पुस्तकं आहेत त्याच्यावरती. आणि अगदी रिसेंटली पण काही लोकांनी काम केलंय. उषा भिशनचं ही पुस्तक आहे. थिअरिटिकल डिस्क्रिप्शन देणारी ही काही पुस्तक आहेत, जे प्रत्यक्ष चित्र आणि त्याच्यावरच असं.
ओके,
मी
थँक्यू.
वाटलं
मला
तर
एक
नंतर
सांगायचं होतं.
तुम्हाला
जरा लिस्ट
हा.
मिळाली तर बरं होईल, मला आवडेल त्याच्यावर
हो
बोलायला.
चालेल.
हा,
मी
थँक्यू.
एक सांगू का? मी किशोरी
हा, हा.
उपाध्ये. आत्ता त्यांनी जे
हा.
सांगितलं ना, तर एका नेटवरनं एका साईटवरनं मी एक असं छोटं एक पुस्तक किंवा चॅप्टर त्याचा डाउनलोड केलेला आहे, तर मी तो ग्रुपवर शेअर करते.
हा, ठीक आहे.
थँक्यू.
आता मी शेवटचा प्रश्न घेतो. गीतांजली हराळ. अच्छा, श्रुती बुजुर्ग. आता हे दोनच प्रश्न.
Sir, I want to ask that
गीतांजली
after Bhatkhande, who took interest in Shruti Vibhajan and Shruti Vibhajan, Rag Vibhajan? Ki after Pandit Bhatkhande, who took interest?
गीतांजली, तुझा आवाज ब्रेक होतोय, नीट ऐकू येत नाहीये.
हॅलो, आता येतोय आवाज सर?
हा,
हॅलो.
बोल.
हा, पंडित भातखंडे यांच्या नंतर कोणी ह्याच्यामध्ये काम म्हणजे रागविज्ञान हे झालं एक, परंतु त्याच्याही व्यतिरिक्त अजून क्लासिफिकेशन रागांचं ह्याच्याबद्दल कोणी अजून इंटरेस्टिंग काम केलंय असं आपल्याला सांगता येईल?
कशाबद्दल म्हणतेस तू? रागांचं वर्गीकरण किंवा राग विवेचनाबद्दल?
रागांचं
पुष्कळ लोकांची आहेत, भरपूर लोकांची पुस्तकं आहेत. म्हणजे अनेक लोक आहेत, म्हणजे ज्याच्यात ओंकारनाथ ठाकूर आहेत, अगदी अलीकडे रामाश्रय आहेत. पुष्कळ लोकांनी रागांच्या बद्दल पुष्कळ केलेलं आहे काम. इव्हन कम्पॅरेटिव्ह कामही केलं, जसं सुभाष शास्त्री सुब्बाराव जे होते, त्यांनी हिंदुस्थानी राग आणि कर्नाटक राग असं कम्पॅरेटिव्ह अनालिसिस दिले. पुष्कळ काम आहेत, भरपूर आहेत तसे म्युझिकॉलॉजिस्ट. Yes, the last question, Shruti Bujur Barua, you can ask.
Hello.
Yes, if there are.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hello.
Ha, Shruti, you can talk.
Hello. Actually, I'm not able to hear.
We can hear you. We can hear you, Shruti ji. You can talk.
Hello.
Ha.
Yes, please speak. We can hear you, Shruti ji. You can talk.
Can you hear me, sir?
Yes.
Yeah.
I think she is not able to hear you.
Pandit Damodar, for the first time, he mentioned in Sangeet Darpan that there are two states of notes. But did he mention it as Komal Swar, Shuddha Swar, or what about Tigra Swar?
Pardon? No. There is no terms like Shuddha and Komal Tivra. He actually explains just Komal and Tivra. So, in a way, like all the notes of Bhairavi are Komal and all the notes of Kalyana are. That kind of nomenclature was earlier used. So he explains the 12 notes in this aspect, like Sa and Pa are Achal, and then Komal Re, Tivra Re, Komal Ga, Tivra Ga, Komal Madhyam and Tivra Madhyam. Like that. Okay, someone actually have texted like, can you suggest a book on Haveli Sangeet? There is a very good book by Satyabhan Sharma ji, Vaishnav Mandiron Mein Sangeet Parampara, and there is another book by published by Sangeet Natak Academy called Pushti Margi Pushti Sangeet Prakash. So these two books are great works on Haveli Sangeet. You can refer to them. Yeah. Then Acharya Brihaspati, yes, of course. Acharya Brihaspati was a great musicologist or historian.
Sir,
Yeah.
first one which is on Pushti Sangeet is the second one. First one for Haveli Sangeet. Sorry, please, if you can repeat.
Vaishnav Mandiron ki Sangeet Parampara.
Vaishnav Mandiron. Okay, sir. Thank you. Surya Bhanu Prakash. No?
Okay, so yeah. So let us stop today. We will continue the session.
Yes,
tomorrow.
thank you, thanks a lot, sir, and thanks a lot to all of you also. May especially thank you Parvati Datta ji also. She is attend this complete session. She is the director for this Mahagami Gurukul from Aurangabad. She is also here with us. So thank you, and आपने आज बहुत ही अच्छा ये सारा जो इतने सारे ग्रंथों की जानकारी दी इसके लिए भी थैंक यू, थैंक्स अ लॉट अगेन टू ऑल.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.